Welcome to this episode of The Secret Spice with yours truly, Cinnamon Alvarez and Dominic Syracuse from the Dominist Manifesto.
What's up?
What's up? Today we're going to talk about complaints and whether or not there's any value in venting.
Yes, I'm interested in the topic, and just so everybody knows, Cinnamon refused to tell me what was going on off air. So everything you're about to see is live and in the moment. What's going on? What's happening?
What's going on? Well, so believe it or not, happy-go-lucky Cinnamon is very capable of being snarky and judgmental, and like just so many complaints in my head, like they don't clean up around here. I'm the only one who makes lunches, or
right.
Or actually, and the real thing was, I was going to actually talk to you before about delegating. Like, when you get your hopes up and you think, oh, I'm going to hand this off, but then you second guess and you think, oh, I'm just going to do it myself because it's faster, that kind of thing. But really what's underneath it is just, I've been having kind of a bad attitude and complaining about things, feeling like the victim.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's even possibly a little judgment there for yourself on your end.
Of course. So I don't know, I think it's common sense that everybody thinks this way, but whenever you're upset with someone else, you're really upset with yourself, don't you think? Like, I'm upset with myself for even being upset with someone else. Now, there is the tendency to want to like push the blame and make other people wrong to make ourselves right, which is also very good. But,
right. Well, and here's what's really interesting is that so often the way that the kind of circle of the mind works is you have an instance, and then it's your belief about the instance that triggers your emotion, which triggers your action. So what I'm interested in is, what are the specific things that are happening? And then what is your belief tied to those things?
Oh, well, I don't know if the specifics are that interesting. Like, what I got most pissy about was that one of my employees didn't do some of her work yesterday, and it fell on me at the end of the day.
Got it.
And I have a belief that she should get it done, and that I have enough on my plate and I don't need to pick up slack for other people. I pay them for that.
Right. Well, and so there's a lot there. So
yeah,
the event is that you didn't do the work. She didn't do the work.
Someone else didn't do the work that I expected.
Someone else didn't do the work. So now there's a lot of beliefs tied in there. One, which is, I'm paying you and I'm paying you to do this work and you're not doing this work. So that's making me angry. Also, the fact that I have to do it now and I have this whole list of other things that I need to do is absolutely bothering me. And it's this is not, this is frustrating and now, so there's all this stuff, like all these beliefs tied into this action, and that obviously each one of those things is dictating your emotions, right? Each one of the emotions is coming from those beliefs. But what's interesting is, is being angry necessarily a bad thing?
No. Although,
so that's interesting.
No. So like, where I go to myself is like, well, that's, I practice a lot of compassion, and it's something I've learned over time. Right. So, because I still think I'm going to be very human. I'm still going to be very judgmental and make other people wrong and play the victim role and all of the human cycle of everything. Right. So like, it's perfect that you're asking me, like, is being angry that wrong? No, I can be compassionate and say, Cinnamon, yeah, I see that you're stressed and you want work to get done and you want it to be done well. And I can see that you're tired and that you're feeling sorry for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with really feeling sorry for myself. Right. I can have some compassion there, that I want to be like, oh, my life is so hard sometimes.
Right.
Like, that's cute if I have compassion for that, unless I have no tolerance.
Patience, these things, right?
Yeah. But it is interesting because I do think that like culturally we think that like don't complain unless you have a solution and you're going to do something about it. That like
Right.
don't be angry, don't make other people wrong. Like my inner critic when because the noise, I call it the noise, the monkey chatter, you know?
Yes.
It like gets so loud and it's vicious, it's mean to me, it's mean to other people. And
Right.
then there seems like this lack of control. There's judgment about, well, I should be above that by now, all kinds of stuff that can let you spin out of control. But
Right.
I'm actually really proud of how I handled it. Although I was a little snarky with my husband. I was snarky. Last night so this is just confession. I find relief in confession. So I want to know what you think about like if there's venting. And I did just a quick little instant search about venting or not venting. So I'm curious. I'll tell you what I found before you give me your opinion.
Very interesting.
But like last night, my confession is I was in a really cranky mood and I was trying to do some work way past where I hit fatigue and it wasn't working for me and I was just failing. And I actually kind of like want to lose my temper and break things once in a blue moon. And that's a weird thing to see in myself. And I can tell my husband knows because he gets really nervous. Like I was like, oh, and I just went and grabbed towards my computer. I wanted to like smash it, you know?
Right.
But I gently put it down and gently threw it so I knew I wouldn't break it, like enough to like, like, have you ever been so mad that you're choosing? Like, I remember one time early when I first started my first business, I was like, I really wanted to lose my temper, but I didn't want to destroy anything that I would have regrets later. So it's like, oh yeah, no, a pencil. Yes, I can destroy this right now.
Right.
Or you want to like, I don't know, you want to cause some pain and harm to other people. But then there's like the rational part of you that's still there. Like you're going to regret this later.
Yes.
If you're lucky.
Absolutely. Well, so I'm super glad that you're touching on all of this because this is actually something I can speak on in realm of my
management
expertise.
Specifically.
Yeah, which is crazy. First of all, what you're experiencing is completely natural and completely human. And it would actually, if you didn't have those urges, this is what people kind of understand. If you didn't have those urges, it would actually be a bigger problem. What I mean is then we're delving into the realm of like, you know, being a sociopath or something. And what I mean is,
which I'm probably that too.
Well, here's what's going on. Just in your brain. And it's very simple. Your brain is a complex thing. Okay. And there's 3 parts that I'm going to talk about right now. There's a bunch of parts of your brain, but there's 3 parts that you kind of mentioned. If anybody's geeky enough to care about, you know, all of it, it's essentially like you have your the cerebral cortex and the cerebellum and then the amygdala. Now, here's kind of how those and it's like evolution, okay? The evolution of the brain. All animals have the first part, and that is your reactive system. So I tell you what, go make any animal mad. Any animal. What are they going to do?
Take the dog's food. What are they going to do?
Right. They're going to bite. Because anytime they are feeling stressed, stress is another form of, a better word for stress is danger. Anytime they feel that there's any kind of danger, and really what that means is any potential for pain. Anytime they feel any potential for pain, they're gonna react. So if they feel like they could get hurt, their family could get hurt in some way, they're gonna bite, they're gonna scratch. It's called fight or flight. Very, very, very natural. Every animal has it. Human beings are not different. Here's what makes us different is that our brain evolved and we developed this thing called logic. And we like to think logic drives the bus. It does not. Emotions drive the bus. Logic is just there to defend your emotions. Logic is like your emotions lawyer. Okay. So whenever you have an emotion and you're like, oh, I'm so mad, blah, 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 logic comes in and goes, well, I'm behaving this way because, and then defends your emotions, right? We like to think we're logical first and we're above emotions. You're not. And your emotions are absolutely necessary. Okay. That's why we call it anger management and not anger disintegration or
make it go away. Anger avoidance.
Right. That's actually a worse issue. I want to get into that. Anger avoidance is actually more dangerous. So the point is, then the last part is you have your frontal lobe, right? And the biggest part of that, guy, is that's where our imagination comes from, our fully fledged imagination. So when we're imagining things in our head, and I'll tell you what, when those three start battling with each other, that's when you start getting just the stuck in your head, in your mind. Because essentially what's going on is it becomes a roller coaster. Something happens and your amygdala doesn't know the difference between emotional pain and regular pain and whatever. So when your employee didn't do the work, you're thinking, one, this is going to put me behind, and I have all this work already, and I'm already overstressed, and this is going to be even harder. And your amygdala, all it hears is pain, 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 panic, panic, fight something, fight or run, fight or run. That's the only thing I know how to tell you to do, fight or run, right? And so that urge you have to grab the computer and break it, or break a pencil, right? You're reacting exactly the way your amygdala is telling you to, which is hit something.
Destroy something.
Yes,
punch somebody in the nose.
We're in danger. We're in danger. You need to break something. And that's why it feels better when you do, because your amygdala goes, okay, problem solved. But that's the animal part of your brain, right?
Yeah, we're like the hamster in the hamster wheel, just going. You know?
Exactly. The logical part of your brain is going, you breaking your computer is not going to fix anything. In fact, it's going to cause
another problem,
cause more problems. So maybe don't do that, you know. And then here's what happens. Those two are battling. And so people choose one of two things. One, they just let their emotions get the better of them. They say things they then regret. They do things they then regret. They do it in the heat of the moment, in passion. We've all been there. We've all done it. Okay. Or what?
Like my husband said to me, just go in the other room.
Right. Get out. I like, well, I'm going to get to that in a sec. Because I like the way Dr. Martin Luther King put it, right? Is he called hatred a disease. And so what happens is you get it in you and it makes you sick. You need to throw up, you need to cough, you need to spew. And it's contagious. So when you cough and spew that negativity, then someone else catches it and they cough and spew. And he said the only remedy is love, right? Which I really appreciate. And
I love that. Yeah.
However, that's a lot easier said than done. In fact, if you are in that fight or flight state, if you're in that heightened mode and someone walks up to you and goes, don't you think you should be more loving? You're going to punch them in the mouth. Like that's not the move that you're going to want to take. And so anyway, you have these two battling each other all the time of logic and emotion. Now, what's another dangerous route is to suppress it. That's equally as dangerous, because there's this great book I read once written by a psychologist. I can't remember their name, but it's called Facing the Fire. And essentially, I talk about this book all the time. I love it.
You mentioned it before.
One of the main points of it is that a lot of people have been hurt by anger or angry outbursts in the past. A lot of people have, I'm one of those people. My father had a terrible temper, and whenever he got angry, what he would do is he would break things, he would punch things, he would threaten people, he would swear at you, he'd be real nasty. And that causes a lot of pain and fear and trauma and these things. So what then I did is I said, I don't want to be like that. I'm not that type of person. So when I would get angry, I wouldn't call it anger, because naturally I go, oh, I'm not an angry person. I've seen what anger does, you know? And so if I started feeling those emotions, I'd go, no, that's a bad emotion. And so you repress it down and you go, I'm not angry. You know, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm good. But the problem with that is, speaking on a chemical level, the chemical that you're experiencing is called cortisol. That's the chemical that makes you want to fight or flight. It makes your heartbeat raise. It makes everything. If you've got that in your system and you're not purging it in any way, then we're talking about disease. We're talking about it manifests in different ways. Maybe that's depression, maybe that's addiction, maybe that your body has to get rid of the cortisol some way. So you grabbing that pencil and breaking it, that purges the cortisol. The same way that you going out and drinking yourself into a stupor is going to purge the cortisol.
Now there's a good solution to a problem.
Right. So the point is, we can't, it's a dangerous route to say, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, but I'm just going to ignore it. I'm better than this. We do it with a lot of stuff. It's not just anger. We do it with jealousy. We do it with fear. We do it with any emotion that we have judged bad.
Yep.
We go,
anything. I call it like the unfulfilled expectation, or, the upset where you have a desire and it just doesn't come through, the disappointment.
Right. You go, I'm better than this. I'm better than this emotion. Let me tell you right now, if you're watching this, you are not better than any emotion. Your emotions are there for a reason, and you're feeling them for a reason. Your brain is communicating something to your body, and that's what an emotion is. So there's no male emotions. We like to think that women are more emotional than men. Not true. Completely false.
I was going to make a joke when you leaned in and said you are not better than. I was going to say you are better than they are, though. You're not better than any emotion.
You're better than that.
You're not better than that.
So here's the solution. So where's the happy medium? Okay. The first thing, if we're talking about just emotions on an emotional level.
Well, and I want to talk about venting specifically. Yes.
And so let's get into that. So one way to literally get, purge that emotion, whatever it may be, is to talk about it, is to vent about it. And so there is value in that. The term that we would teach about in anger management was called the backpack. Every time something happens to you and you just repress it, it's like you're carrying around a backpack and you put a brick in the backpack.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah,
and the more you repress, the more bricks you put in the backpack, until after a while you're just carrying around this load. Oh my gosh, it's so heavy. You've got to get that out in some way.
Which is the concept of how we use the word venting. Like you want to let off steam. You're just putting more and more pressure, right? It's building up.
Right. So venting is I'm just going to say it is a way of releasing the bricks from the backpack. The positive, let's look at the positive sides of venting are, one, you get it out. Two, when someone's listening to you, it triggers the same chemicals in the brain as being hugged or loved. So when you have someone there who's like, let me just hear you out. I just want to hear you, that's a very good thing. And also, a lot of times people know the answer to their problem without you needing to tell them. They just need to hear themselves say it out loud.
Right. So this is the thing about complaining, is who wants to be on the listening side.
And that's exactly where I was going. Because I, it is important to have somebody that you trust. Like, for anybody watching, whether you've seen it on the air or not, I complain to Cinnamon all the time about all sorts of stuff. I'm always
Maybe just a
complaining
little
about
bit
one
about
thing
your
or another.
brother, or which has
Yeah.
been a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm missing that.
actually, I told you there was a problem this morning is kind of related to that. But
Oh, okay,
regardless,
good.
but the thing is that um so having somebody that you trust, there's no better feeling than having somebody go, hey, I'm here for you, I love you. Now, a problem is, as I like to say, there are some people who like to use others as emotional toilets, which means they're like, I'm just going to dump all my shit onto you, and then I feel better.
That's
Now,
what I'm going to tell my husband next time. Do you like to drive home? Because he likes to do his venting on his drive home from work.
Right.
And so I'm just going to say, am I your emotional toilet during your drive?
Right. Well, and here's the difference between, I think that there's a limit, and that limit is the listener's boundary. So as a listener, you say, hey, I love you, I care for you, you're there for me, I want to be there for you. And there's no better feeling than, the other day I was talking to a friend and I said, gosh, maybe I should think of this solution, maybe I should think of this solution. And she just kind of put her hand on my shoulder and said, sometimes we just need to be heard, and I'm happy to hear you out, and that meant a lot.
I wish I was that good. I tell myself, I don't know how much more I can listen to this story that I don't understand anyway. I don't even know the people involved.
Right.
I'm talking specifically about my husband. So that's where, like, one of my tricks is you break it up. If you need somebody to be a good listener, you got to pick and choose who you're going to lean on once in a while. If you keep going to your spouse, they're not probably going to be the best.
Well, yeah. And also it's so there are a few things. Well, there are a few things. One is, if you really are just talking to let it out, right? Like, you really just want to let it out.
No, we're really seeking sympathy. Remember, the human, I think the human tendency is to go to victim mode, and I'm seeking sympathy.
And that's where I want to reach that conclusion in a moment, because when it comes to just getting it out there, it's interesting, like, what it is you're seeking. So one thing is, okay, am I seeking you to feel bad for me, or am I really seeking a solution? Like, I really am talking about this because it's bothering me and I'm trying to figure out what to do. So I'd like your advice.
Don't you wish that anyone who complained to you was seeking a solution?
Right. But, and I've heard, from a lot, Molly, come here. My dog's getting into this right now.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my gosh,
I want a solution.
I'm seeking a solution. Yeah. So what you're looking for is important. A lot of people will say this. I'm sure you've heard it a lot. I don't want you to tell me what to do. I just want you to hear me out, And it's tough for solution-driven people like you and me.
Oh.
Right. You're like, okay, all right, fine. Yeah. But once again, most people have the answer to their problems. They just need the term for it, the buzzword is called emotional interviewing. Are you familiar with?
No. I'm not
emotional interviewing?
No.
Emotional interviewing essentially comes from the concept, like I said, that people already know the answer to their problem. They just need to hear themselves out. So what it's your job to do as the listener is to actually ask engaging questions that's going to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into what it is they're, quote unquote, complaining about, until you reach the heart of what it is. Because normally when somebody's complaining, it's because they're agitated about something on a very fundamental level. It's just coming out in the whatever instance they're complaining about just triggered this core belief in them.
Right. Now, for coaching, for example, you and I both do coaching. So yes, that is very helpful if there's that dynamic, right? And someone is looking for a solution and you're able to listen and reflect back so that they have the answers to their own problems. But
Right.
when you're really seeking sympathy, right? When you are in that
Yes.
stage of, I don't want a solution. In fact, when people are
Right.
offering you solutions and it makes you more angry.
Yes.
Mhm.
And this is where I think you are really, really, really good at calling people out on this, because you call me out, is when now you're complaining for sympathy, but you're doing it as an aid to justify you not moving
Not
forward
taking
or
action.
not, you know what I mean? So like, for instance, if I use a parable from the Bible to illustrate this, because I think it does it really well. There's a man lying on the road, and the Bible just describes him as, it says he can't walk. Okay, so he's lying by a tree, and he's near the Jordan River. The Jordan River had it was like a holy place where people would jump and swim and bathe and get blessed and all this stuff. So he's lying by the side of the road, and Jesus walks up upon him and says, "What are you doing?" And the man gives him his story. And he says, "Years ago, I was hurt in an accident. And because of that, I haven't been able to walk. And now I'm forced to just sit here and watch everybody jump into the Jordan and swim and play. And it's like I'm constantly tortured just sitting down and having to watch them do this all the time." And Jesus, this is one of the only times in the Bible he doesn't like put his hands on him. He doesn't do some kind of woo-woo magic or whatever. He literally just looks at him and says, "Get up and walk." He says, "If you want to go in the river, then get up and go to the river." And the man gets up and goes to the river. Now, what's fascinating about that, you can get into a whole theological debate about, was it a miracle? Was it not? Blah, 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 blah. The way I like to interpret it, what feeds me, is the fact that this man has been telling this story to himself and to everybody about why he can't get up, why he can't walk, what awful thing happened to him in the past that's limited him from getting anything he's wanted in his life. And whenever anybody comes, that's the first thing he's going to tell,
Yeah.
And
Story.
right. Now, going back to what I said before, from a psychological standpoint, being listened to triggers the same chemicals in the brain as being hugged or loved. So the trap that some people fall into, what I call serial complainers, is that's the only way they know how to get love or validation, is going up and saying, "So this awful thing happened to me, this awful thing happened, this awful thing." It's literally the equivalent of a child coming up and just going, "Can I have a hug?" Or "Can I have a
Which
kiss?"
is so much easier. Like I have, this is something I feel guilty about
Yeah.
sometimes, is I have a relatively low threshold for the complaint.
Yes.
I would have much more, I would be much more successful if you came to me and said, "Can you just feel sorry for me a little bit and let me feel like a child and be a victim, and you can have compassion for what I'm dealing with?" I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
I can
So
do that.
an interesting question is why? Why? What is it about complaints specifically that drive you so crazy?
That's an interesting question. Um, Man, I don't know. I mean, I could make something up on the fly. It's probably,
Sure.
I think when we see something in someone else, like when we have low patience for something in someone else, it's because we don't like that about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess, because I have that belief, my guess is
Right.
that when other people complain, that somehow I don't like it if I'm a complainer. I'm guessing
Yeah.
that
Maybe
I that
maybe
I
that
have
could
a
be it. And that's
judgment that
something.
there's nothing like what I respect and I admire about myself is my when I call myself the get it doneer. Like I
Yes.
like that. I'm like, yeah, that's something I'm proud of, is I'm able to
Right.
make things happen. Which this is interesting. You asked me this question because now I'm seeing more about myself too, where I have low tolerance when I'm like making lots of to-do lists, and I have lots of plans, and I fail over and over and over and over again. And I get in this downward spiral. So I think that the similarity that I'm seeing between both the complaining and the not getting things done on my to-do list is that I feel like it's unproductive. And I have a judgment about being not productive, not a value. Like I don't, and it comes from a good place, because all I want really is to make a difference and to, you know, have people love. At the end of the day, I just want everyone to love everyone. And that's a good thing about myself, right? So I think that if we're complaining, we're not doing that. And if we're not getting things done, we're not doing that. So it's like we talk about before of your best characteristics or your worst characteristics, also your traits, you know, you bring the whole thing. So that's probably what it is that it's the opposite of the desire I have so much. It's the opposite. To me, it's the opposite of love, making other people wrong and not being productive and not getting anywhere. And I don't know, if I hear the same story over and over and over again, it's like, oh man, are you torturing me here?
Right. Well,
and I don't want to torture people. I want people to be happy and in love. And
I want you to know that what you're explaining right now is a very common trait amongst entrepreneurs and millionaires and leaders, because there are a few things that you understand when you become a leader or an entrepreneur, which is, number one is that failures are learning experiences. So anytime anything bad happens, the first go-to is, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we move on? You're goal-oriented, which means, you know, some people, everybody's goal-oriented in their own way. Everybody has hopes and dreams and everything like that. But for some people, it's different than others. Some people are like, listen, in life, I am on a climb. And so I am climbing, accomplishing things, making things done, getting things done, you know. Other people hold different values, which isn't bad, just different. They value different things. And so in that situation, they might not be able to go, you know, I really want to conquer this to move on to the next thing. You know, for them, it's much more like, I'm stuck in this emotional funk and I don't know any way necessarily out of it. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure myself out, all this stuff. The reason there's conflict between those folks and like the settlers versus the explorers, both very necessary, but a big thing is exactly what you said, which is time, where you go, okay, look, I love you and I care about you, okay? But if all you want to do is complain for 2 hours, I'm probably not the best person to do that to, because I have a bunch of things that I could be getting done in these 2 hours. And if it's I've reached a point where I have to ask people that. I have to compartmentalize in my brain. And if someone calls me and say, hey man, we should catch up. And I'll say, okay, what's the purpose of the call? Is the purpose of the call just to
let's complain together about other people?
Right, exactly. Is it just to catch up? Is it just do that? Yeah, because if it is, that's fine, but I can't do it until next Thursday, right? Because I've got all these deadlines I have to meet and all these things I'm working on that are time sensitive. So it's not that I don't love you, it's not that I don't care about you, but if the point is, if that's the end goal, is just to be heard, I'm going to be able to hear you out next Thursday at 7:00. You know, but it's interesting because those that hold priority over my life, there are those that their emotional wellness is my top priority, like my son. So for instance, if my son comes to me crying, I'm going to drop everything. You know, then that's a matter of priority. It's, listen, I drop everything, you know, I'm here for you. I want it. And if the answer is, I'm just really sad about something, it's like, hey man, let me take the time to give you 100% of my full energy, because that's where my priority lies. Now, it might be hurtful to someone who's like, I thought we were friends and I need this now, you know, that kind of thing. And I totally understand that, but it's a matter of emotional priority and it's a matter of goals. What is the end goal in this? So I have a friend that, or it's a family member that I have that I love her to death, but she's absolutely a serial complainer. I often say, if I were to ever write a script about my family, I would just give her one monologue, and throughout the play, you would just see her telling that same monologue to every single
You
character.
should do this.
It's just on a loop.
Because I really believe we all, for those of you who are listening, I think we all go there. You know, I don't want anyone to ever think we're above and beyond that. I mean, yeah. I mean, I have an employee at work that we work longer hours together, and sometimes we do just like to have bitch sessions.
Right. I like
let's get a cup of coffee in the afternoon and complain a little bit.
My son's mother, she calls it, her and her friends get together and they have wine, and they call it wine about it.
Oh yeah, the wine about it.
Where they just get together and whine about it, which, once again, there's absolute value to that. There's absolute value. There's absolute necessary, but a good test as to whether you're being emotionally used or not. Like if somebody is literally just using you as an emotional garbage dump and is not really interested in reciprocity, is this, and it works. Is if someone comes up to you and goes, oh my gosh, I just had the worst time. I just had the worst. A quick interruption is, oh, me too. Can I tell you about it?
Oh, I love that.
And if immediately, if they go, yeah, sure, let me hear it.
Odds are you're going to blindside them.
They're going to, if there's just right away, if there's a thing of them going, oh, sure, let's talk about it, versus them going, oh,
no, I just want to tell you about my stuff.
You know, I gotta think. Or if it's like
if you were going to bet on one of them, really, the generalization, right? Which one is it going to be? They're going to go, sure. Like,
right, exactly.
Oh no.
Right. And what's really funny is I had to learn that, because the reason it's important is because if they're just using you to talk, to be completely crude, it's very similar to someone just using you for sex, in that it's not that they want to talk to you, is that your opinion and your thoughts. It's that they want to talk to someone to feel better.
Right.
So if they can be talking to anybody right now, you and I, who are very busy, have a lot of stuff to do, really, you have to come to an emotional understanding that you really aren't that important to that person. So they can get it from someone else or anybody else, you know? But it's, you know, it could be rude to go, you know what? I just don't have time for you. Because they could take that in a different way. Yeah. So that little test is nice, because I'll tell you, I'll give you an example of two family members for me. One is my, a family member that I love, but they love to complain and will complain to anybody. And so what I've done, and this is actually a good thing, if they call me, what I'll do is I'll go, oh, hi. And then I will literally put the phone down to where I can't hear anything they're saying. And I'll just do my work and just keep doing my work and just let it happen. But here's why it works for everybody. Because ultimately, all they need to do is vent.
Right. So what I do for my husband is I say, oh, are you just venting, or do you want me to actually listen to you this time?
Right.
He's like, no, you can put me on speakerphone.
Right. And so what I'll do is I'll let her vent.
I'll say, okay, but make sure you get my attention if you actually want me to hear a part of it.
Right. And then, tune it out, work, whatever, every once in a while. Yep. Go on. Okay.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it always ends the same. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I just needed to get that out. You're like, no problem. Thank you. Good talk. But I don't need to spend my time getting emotionally invested. I'm very empathetic. So one of the problems is that I'm now going to take on all of your emotional, all of the emotions myself. Now, here's the difference is then I have a friend or a family member who I'll go up to and I'll say, man, something's really bothering me. And they'll sit down and they're totally engaged and they're like, what's up? Let me hear all about it. And then I'll do that, you know, and they'll hear me out. And then, you know, they'll go, yeah, it's so weird. You know, I've been dealing with something very similar. And then it becomes a heart-to-heart conversation. Once again, to use the analogy of sex, it's the difference between somebody just looking for sex and getting laid versus somebody really interested in making love. And as I said, being listened to is the same as feeling loved. And in the second situation, it's mutual. It's a give and take. It's these kind of things. So that's, I mean, obviously it's a very, very deep topic. You can kind of go round and round and round and round in circles.
Yep.
But one of the things that's important to know is, yes, venting is very, very good for you. You know, it's very, very good for you. However, it's also putting a burden on those that listen. Now, I have the exact opposite problem where I don't like to complain and I don't like to do any of that because I don't want to inconvenience anybody. Right. I'm like, listen, I don't want to bother you with my problems. I don't want to bother you with my worries. I'd much rather just grin and bear it. And if it's not something that I can accomplish with tasks, I'll just white knuckle it and be upset, you know, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it's great because when I told you I looked it up at the beginning of the conversation, I told you I looked it up quickly to see, because there are different schools of thought and if there is value in venting or not. I do think that perpetual complaining without wanting a solution can be an issue, right? If you aren't mindful enough, if we don't have that self-awareness to know, I'm looking for, like, what do you want? Am I looking for a solution? Am I looking to be heard, which is probably most often, right?
Right.
Am I looking to, is this going to be beneficial? I'm looking to get it out of my head because I'm making myself crazy. Like some of us just, what happens is I think we go into complaint mode without really knowing and taking them to the moment. Like, what is it that I want for myself and what do I want to get out of this?
Right.
And then what I was going to say is I did look it up and you hit the nail on the head, is that the science shows the benefit is of venting is that there is something gained for being heard, for having somebody listen to you. So do you want to know what I did in my, how I handled mine?
I can't wait.
I told you a little brag session. I also think that, side tangent, I think that we also have societal beliefs that we're not supposed to brag. So I'll use, self, what do you call it? But I think it's okay to self-acknowledge, right?
Right.
So what I did for myself, and the reason I want to share it is in case anybody ever wants to steal an idea, it just happened to be lucky for me in work. Yeah. So I went into work with a lot of complaints and a lot of stress. And I thought to myself, oh no, I don't want to just like rip into an employee about all the things that aren't getting done correctly. So instead I said, hey, before you do anything, I want to have our powwow, because I recognize here's the opportunity of what was missing, is we hadn't been having our regular meetings where we help each other prioritize tasks, right? Or I'm giving her guidance, the balance between micromanaging. So that's always awkward. Yeah. So what I did is I said, I want to have a quick little meeting with you first, but I said, I want to put a different spin on it before we start. I want you to use me and just complain. And it caught her off guard because she's one that's very silent. Like one of the greatest things is that she doesn't seem to be on an emotional roller coaster ever. Like she can be the calm, steady voice at work, which is amazing to have. And sometimes you get worried about people like that don't lose their temper and stuff. So she was very uncomfortable, but she was able to do some complaining about personal stuff, not work. She wasn't able to tell me stuff like, you're putting too much work on me or whatever. I wanted to give her that space. But I thought it was a really cool tool. It turned out that I didn't necessarily need to give her all of the criticism that I was going through last night and this morning. Instead, I just needed to connect with her. And then And then I was able to do these little microfine adjustments and say, okay, let's go back into the powwow of like, what's on the to-do list, what's to do that. And I was able to direct, if this, do that, then do that, those types of things.
Right.
But it all came from noticing that I was in a complaining mode and saying, I'm going to hand somebody else the microphone. And so it worked.
Yeah.
It was an awesome game.
I love that. And also everybody's got their strengths. We talk about this all the time, as far as like a part of delegation and delegating successfully is understanding what someone's strength is. And so there are people who are very emotionally driven and love being there for people and love hearing them out and then there are others who are like, okay, but what's the practical solution? Because if not, it's a matter of time and these things. So I liked when I worked in the jails, my two bosses, I worked in a school, and the two principals had a very neat system. And what it was first you had what they called green chair time. And it's very similar to what you're talking about, which is one of the principals, very emotionally driven, very, how are you feeling? Listen, the most important thing to me is morale. So I want to make sure you're okay and you're heard and you're listened to, that kind of thing. So what he would do is if you had to have any kind of meeting, if you had any kind of complaint or grievance or whatever, you had green chair time, which is he had a green chair in his office. You sit in the green chair and he was just there to hear out your complaint. What is it? What's bothering you? What's disturbing you? What's whatever, right? And then he would write it all down and he'd go, great. And then he'd give it to our other principal. Now, our other principal was data-driven, logic-driven. What's the solution? And what they did is then they reviewed it, looked at it, and went, okay, seems like this is the problem. I'm going to make a practical solution. For that. And that was the second conversation. Now the conversation is, what are we going to do about this? How can we prevent it? And it was great because the first principal, they had no interest in a practical solution. They were like, well, we could dive in deeper for hours, whatever. And the second principal had no interest in emotion. They were like, I don't care.
But what's even better, here's the thing that's so brilliant about that model is that for the person with the complaint, if they know that's the structure, then they're only going to be bringing the complaint that they are hoping for a solution for, because they know that's the next step, right?
Yeah.
It's like, look, you can come here to be heard, and the next step is I'm going to hear you, and I'm going to hand this off to be able to offer a solution. So that has you then, when you're like, okay, if I'm the complainer, then I'm thinking like, look, I'm going to complain about something that I actually want help with.
Yes.
Versus no intention for a solution whatsoever. Right? Because we all are guilty. I'll say we all have people that do that.
Right.
Because we're all guilty of not necessarily wanting a solution. We want to be, there's a lot in being the victim that I want to spend just a minute, if you don't mind, that,
please,
again, from the purpose of like, have some compassion for who we are, who as people, right? Is that sometimes they or we don't necessarily want a solution, and we go to this place of being a victim. And it's not an empowering place to be, but it's okay. Like that,
right.
Sometimes we want, I call it the sexy excuse to not be in action.
Right. Well, and so it's like this. Everything has its place and everything has its purpose. And like anything else, that place and that purpose has a reward and a function, but everything also has the possibility of addiction. And here's what I mean very simply to you, to talk about what we're talking about. Okay, anger. As I said, anger can be very, very, very useful. Anger can be very useful, sometimes in setting boundaries, sometimes in using as fuel or inspiration. Sometimes, these kind of things, right? I mean, look, you can look at a lot of the most important cultural events in history, and the leaders were motivated out of anger. I am mad that this is happening. I am angry that people are getting taken advantage of. I am angry that we don't do this, And
we're
so,
more likely to act to avoid pain, right?
Yes.
Than we
Right.
are to go after something to go after the carrot.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's times that being angry is completely justified, right? Now, at the same time, victimhood exists. So, for instance, I have a friend walking down the street, minding their own business, texting. They got mugged, they got stabbed, they got robbed, and they were left on the side of the road. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that
That's
person
horrible.
was a victim of a crime. So, and then for somebody to be, if someone went, if they were to call their job and go, listen, I got stabbed, I'm on the side of the road, I'm bleeding, and they're like, you and your excuses,
Right.
Like, stop being such a victim, get empowered and get into work, stitch yourself up. That's ludicrous, right? And there's varying levels of that. I mean, as we've talked about big T's and little T's before, but here's where it runs into a problem is you go down and start using these things to fill a perpetual void in your personality. What I mean is, if anger is the only way that you are able to get things done, that's a problem.
Or the only way to get attention, get somebody to listen to you.
Or if it's the only way to express yourself emotionally or purge negative feelings, that's a problem. It's also a problem if victimhood is the only way that you are able to receive love. So, I know somebody who within 10 seconds of you meeting them, they will talk to you about how badly they were bullied when they were a child. Within 10 seconds of you meeting them. And what's important to realize with all of this is what we were talking about before, is what's the intent behind it? Because if your intent is to go, hey, I understand you were bullied, I was bullied, so I can relate to you. Mm-hmm. I understand the feeling, here's how I can help, versus going, hi, so I don't get a lot of love and attention in my life, but I really like it when people give me that, oh, poor you face. So let me tell you about all these problems I have. And, and once again, no judgment. It's just those things can be perpetual problems. They're stopping you in life from achieving what you want, getting these things in. And it's important to kind of compartmentalize it. What's the purpose? What are you looking for? What are you looking to get out of this? That kind of thing. I think that's really helpful to understand for yourself and for other people.
Awesome. So what to do, what action, what cinnamon challenge should we give with people who might have a complaint?
That's a really, really great question. I was talking earlier. Mm-hmm. I was talking earlier about anger and how anger is necessary, complaints are necessary. But the one thing that they have in common is they run the risk of being damaging to others. They're great for you because it helps you unpack that backpack, mm-hmm. but it can be damaging to others. And so what I think is a real exercise mm-hmm. is, in fact, I need to do this too really badly.
Okay. Yeah.
Is writing it down. And I know that sounds so cliche, but here's what I like to advise. Write down whatever complaint you have as if you're talking to that person that you have the complaint about. Write it down as if you're talking to them and say everything you wish you could say. Don't hold back. Be as mean as you want to be as angry as you want to be as much of a victim as you want to be, and just write it out, write it out, write it out, write it out, write it out. And then give yourself 3 days. Write it out.
That's a long
time.
Give
yourself 3 days. Whatever is still lingering needs to be addressed. Whatever you just needed to get out in the moment, that's just residual stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's this, after 3 days, if there are still these core lingering issues, for instance, using your employee as an example, to where you say, okay, listen, I know this thing passed, but this was an inconvenience for these reasons, and that needs to be able to speak about it more objectively than in the moment. And it's, because that's when the damaging words come out. You're lazy and you've inconvenienced me and you're a problem. And that's when it's like, now we're getting into kind of perpetual.
Yeah, no, this is a good exercise. It's a good challenge, because there's so much value in getting out of your head the craziness we're capable of creating, and then out in front of you so you can separate from it. Because yes, even though I was successful in my game of inviting my employee to give me her complaints, I don't think
which is really great.
Well, but I don't know if it's a good exercise, really. That's why I didn't give that as the challenge. I don't know if you really want to be inviting other people just to complain to you all the time. For me, it was just, what can I do fun, different, flip it, to get out of the funky space that I was in. I didn't want to just dump on her. But no, I do love it. In fact, in my book, one of my favorite exercises that I actually got from a course that I took is, I don't know if I've explained to you it seems like. Have I ever told you about seemings?
But go ahead and
there's a collage process too. So one of the ways you could modify the challenge that Dominic just gave us is writing out the complaint. You could say, and ahead of it seems like they never get anything right. It seems like they're behind on their deadlines. It seems like, because then you're getting it out of your head, you're getting it out in front of you, but you're also with language, linguistically, you're giving it an opportunity to shift, to be other than the way it's occurring for you. So I like that. And then I like to come back around. Mm-hmm.
Yes. The way I like to talk about it is it's difference between smoke and fire. Here's what I mean. In most cases of a fire, it's not the fire that's the most dangerous thing. It's not the fire that kills people. It's the smoke.
Yes.
Okay. So I view the fire as the objective issue that has caused a problem. That's the fire. The smoke is all that residual stuff that comes up from it, so for instance, using your example, the fire was that this thing that you paid for did not get done. And that means that it became an extra burden for you. That's a problem no matter what. That's an objective problem. But what the smoke is the smoke is all that stuff that comes up from the problem, which is, you're lazy and I'm paying you to do all of this, and I
all the other made up stuff.
Well, that's all this stuff that's coming up from it. So what's good, what venting does and what anger does is it allows us, like an outburst, allows us to get rid of all the smoke. Because that's really what's causing damage in
let
our
off
brain.
steam.
It's like you said before, the cluster, the dun, 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 right? Writing it out is a great way to do that, and allowing yourself the freedom to be judgment free. I'm going to be as nasty as I can be. I'm going to be as angry as I can be. I'm going to just.
You could put their face on a wall and throw darts if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. Just, you can't, and I can't believe, and I mean, just nasty. And this is good for. This is good if you have a bad relationship with a family member that's lasted 20 years. It's good, Because then what it ends up doing is you get it all out, you say all these things, and maybe you need to write 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages, whatever.
You could even do the
And
ritual of burning the letters and, you know.
Right. But then what's important is after all that's out, the question is what lingers. And what lingers, what sticks around is normally the actual problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what the real issue is.
Yeah, the root cause. Yeah,
and it's interesting. This is the last thing I'll say because I know we're going quite over time.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, when you're able to speak objectively about an issue, people don't take offense to it. So for instance,
mm-hmm.
if when you're able to divorce yourself from all the emotion and all that stuff, like for instance, I'll tell you the problem I had this morning, which is I've just hired an editor to edit my stand-up special. Now it's a matter of collecting all of the footage and getting it over there. Well, I had to get the footage from my brother, who, as we've talked about before, he and I don't have a good relationship. We had to end our working relationship and all this stuff. Well, I sent all the footage over, and it turns out we only have partial footage. We don't have everything. Okay? So then with me contacting, my brother and saying, hey,
I'm missing
we don't got
stuff.
everything.
I need it.
And he's going, well, that's what I got to give you.
Take it or leave it.
That. Right. And so now it puts me in problem solving mode, right? To where at first my initial reaction is to get super duper angry, right? Like, what do you mean? I paid you this much money and now you're expecting me to pay this person all this money to have a product that's not even going to be complete? Are you kidding me?
And what do you mean it's not there, or you're holding it from me, or right? There's all the stuff that we can make up around it.
There's all this stuff, right? And that is what's dangerous, especially in relationships. That's the kind of stuff that tore my brother and I apart initially, which is the fact that I would go, I would immediately, because it's my brother, I would immediately go, do you really not have it, or do you just not feel like looking for it?
Right.
And right away, that's, what are you saying? And now we're fighting about
something. Are you
something
accusing me of blah, 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 blah? Mm-hmm.
Right. We're fighting about personal character attacks rather than the issue at hand.
Right.
And so when you're able to get out all that, vent all that in a place that's not, going to cause more damage, I'm then able to stop and go, okay, so the objective problem that I have.
Yeah. The dilemma is I don't have the
I
content.
only have half the footage I need. So if you come up to somebody and say, hey, I only have half the footage I need, or if you were to go to your employee and say, hey, it needs to get done, and with everything I have, I literally don't have time to do it. What are we going to do? That's an objective problem,
right?
That everyone can agree needs to be solved, Yeah. And so, but that, like I said, it's tough to get there, especially if on the way to getting there, you have punched and beaten and bruised each other with, all that stuff.
Awesome. So the challenge is I'm going to write it out. We're going to leave it here. Write it all out. Write out the complaints. Step away from it. He said 3 days. I think that's too long. 30 minutes.
No way.
All right.
Because I'll just tell you this right now.
Yeah.
Especially if you get on a hot streak, you're going to like the way it feels. And then it's going to just be, another thing, and you're going to say some cool stuff and be like, I can't wait to say that to him. The time thing is important. It's important.
All right. Write out all the bitch session. Put the bitch session in writing. Give yourself 3 days.
Well, okay. give yourself, let me just put it this way. If it's one day, if it's a few hours, give yourself enough time to
separate from the emotion of it.
Let the dust settle.
And then notice what is still there that is an actual.
Yeah, because if there's, after all the dust is settled, if there's still a problem, well, then that needs to be addressed, Then
address the problem. And that isn't, remember, this is a challenge, those of you listening, is to address the real problem. So do the exercise.
Yes.
See if there's something to address. And the bonus is address the real issue.
Yes. Right. Yeah, that's the other part, is that what's lingered is what needs to be addressed.
Yep. So that's the real challenge, the bonus challenge. Awesome. Thank you for your contribution. You're amazing. And thank you for everyone who plays with us and comments below and what they actually get out of this challenge. Yeah. All right.
Really appreciate it.
Until next time.
As always, for having and listening.